Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Eric Hardy. I am an analyst on the National Student Loan Data System. Can you guys hear me okay? A few years ago, I got halfway through an hour-and-a-half presentation and realized that no one beyond like the fourth row could hear a word we were saying. Um, so we always want to check in and make sure the sound is working. Again, my name's Eric Hardy. I'm an analyst on the National Student Loan Data System. I'm here with Lisa Walker, who's also an analyst on NSLDS. And combined, we have over 20 years of experience on NSLDS, and we're excited to present with you guys. Just by show of hands, how many people have used NSLDS website in the past? Great. That's fantastic. How many of you have done your enrollment reporting through NSLDS? Okay, one or two. How many of you use a third-party servicer to do your enrollment reporting? Okay, a handful. And how many of you aren't sure? Okay. Fair enough. We just wanted to get an idea of where the experience level is as we move through the presentation. We'll make sure we highlight certain things. I'm also going to mention that we have 86 slides. We definitely know that we are not going to get through all of them. However, what we've done is we've front-loaded the most valuable, what we think is the most valuable information for new FAAs in the beginning of the presentation, and as we move through, we'll adjust as necessary. So we're going to have a quick discussion on the NSLDS overview, just kind of a general idea of the scope and volume of data that's received in the system. We're going to focus in on loans and grants, and we're going to pay special attention to the NSLDS aggregates. So we'll have a little bit of a lengthy discussion there. We're going to review the enrollment history or the enrollment reporting screens, and then talk a bit about the process of enrollment reporting. We're also going to talk about transfer student monitoring, as well as the various reports that are available and how to request those reports, along with various things like organization information, tools and references. Then we're definitely going to reserve some time for a Q&A at the end. However, we're pretty casual, so that if you have a question as we're going through the presentation, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll definitely get a microphone over to you and take a second and answer your question. So I often find that the most valuable information we share comes out of the questions and answers, not always just the information that we're presenting. So NSLDS is the first comprehensive database at the Department of Education around all Title IV information. The idea is that we provide a centralized view of financial aid history, and our main purpose is to assist in eligibility determination. So really NSLDS is designed and focused on borrower eligibility determination. So really the aggregates, defaults, things like that are the most important piece of business that we think we do, in addition to about 1,700 other smaller tasks that we perform. So NSLDS has a large number of data providers, and you can see on the screen, we just wanted to give you an idea of what systems or partners are feeding into NSLDS. So if we start at the very center, we have the federal loan servicers. And by far, the bulk of the data that's coming into our system is coming in from our federal loan servicers. That's Navient, FIA, or Fed Loan Servicing, rather, Nelnet, Great Lakes, as well as our non-for-profit servicers as well. We also still receive quite a bit of information from guarantee agencies. Does anyone know what a guarantee agency is? Probably not if you're a new FAA. In the FEL loan program, a guarantee agency would issue the insurance on a FEL loan, and part of their job was to report FEL loan data into NSLDS. So we still get about 20% of our loan portfolio reported in by guarantee agencies. We definitely do receive Perkins loan data from schools. Most schools use a third-party servicer to report that Perkins data into us. I think I asked last year at one of our sessions, it was one of the rooms that 1,500 people. I asked how many schools reported directly to NSLDS, and one guy raised his hand in the whole room. So most schools do utilize a third-party servicer. We're also receiving information from the default management collection system, as well as the total and permanent disability determination system. So that's kind of our specialized loan reporting, where we're getting defaulted loan data from DMCS, and then TPD is our disability contractor, and we receive information about loans that are either being monitored for discharge or have been discharged from TPD. Another key piece is enrollment reporting, so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about enrollment reporting. We do collect data in NSLDS from all of our schools about all of their attendees, as long as the attendees are Title IV recipients. We definitely have lots of data exchanges with the central processing system. I know you guys have talked about student eligibility a little bit earlier in the day. So definitely NSLDS interacts with CPS to make sure that we're helping CPS determine student eligibility. And then, of course, the Common Origination Disbursement System, COD, and NSLDS have a pretty hefty exchange of data, mostly around things like SULA and 150%. So we're not going to go way deep into that today, but we will gloss over just a little bit of it. And then, of course, we also interact with studentloans.gov. We get aid overpayments into the system, gainful employment data, which we're not going to discuss at all today, since those regulations are no longer in effect as of July 1st, 2020. And FSA web enroll, that's definitely how we know who can have access to NSLDS. So just wanted to give you just a quick overview of the data providers that are coming into the system. So NSLDS basically houses all of the Title IV loan and grant information, except for one thing. Can anyone figure out which grant NSLDS is not collecting data on? SEOG, exactly. So everything but SEOG should be reported and reflected in NSLDS. Also federal work study is not reported. So it sounds like most of you have accessed the system, or it looked like most of you had accessed the system at one point. So you know when you come into the system, we have the main menu tab. And from there, we have various things that can help you begin to navigate the system. I'm not going to spend much time talking about the main menu, since most of you have already logged on. So we're going to jump right into loan and grant display. So probably the most widely used tab in NSLDS is the aid tab. And we're going to talk a bit today about loan history, as well as the overpayment list, grants, delinquent borrowers, exit counseling, student contact information. We're going to briefly talk about the student access interface, and we're going to talk about the SSN conflict link under that aid tab. We're not going to really talk about reaffirmations or Perkins submittal data, just to save us time. I'm not even sure that we're going to get through all of this as it is. So under the loan history, after you retrieve a student and the student or the borrower is displayed in the loan history page, you're going to see that we have a couple main sections. If there's any relative icons, we display those at the top, and we'll talk a little bit about the difference between the blue-colored informational icons and what we affectionately refer to as the candy corn warning icons, because they look like candy corns. We also are going to spend a minute talking about the aggregates section, or actually probably a little bit more than a minute talking about the aggregates. We also display MPN data up here on the aid tab under loan history, as well as teacher loan forgiveness. And then probably some of the more important stuff is the loan summary. So we show a high-level view on this aid, on the history page of each individual loan that loans that the borrower has received. So briefly, the warning icons, those candy corn icons, are those are identifying that something is not good or there's something that you need to pay attention to for a student if you are reviewing that student's information. You can see we do things like exceeds the graduate limit, or the student has an overpayment, or they've met or exceeded their Pell LEU. So the idea here on the warning icons is something is impacting student eligibility that you probably need to take a look at if you've actually retrieved this person and taken a look. This is just a handful of what we display. There's a number of those icons. And then we also have informational icons. So it's not easy to see if you're looking at the student's loan history that they also have grant history. So we'll make an icon, we'll show an informational icon if there's actually Pell Grants or Teach Grants or any of the other grant programs awarded to that student, as well as things like SULA. And then we have things like a late roster notifications. So we'll get a bit into that as we move into the enrollment reporting. So why does NSLDS calculate the aggregates? What are they for? The idea behind the aggregates is to help schools determine how much aid a borrower is eligible for. That's the kind of the long and short of it. Of course, NSLDS supplies that aggregate information on the ICER. However, often when schools are processing the ICER data is out of date. So if a borrower filed their FAFSA on October 1st and you're not doing your awarding until June or July of the next year, that ICER data could be a little bit old. So the idea is that the NSLDS website is available to you to retrieve and review a student's information and get immediate, refreshed aggregate data for that individual student. And specifically, when it comes to the aggregates, we're highlighting the difference between an aggregate balance, so how much of a borrower's balance is applied to their limit, versus how much is the outstanding principal balance. Does anyone have an idea why everything that a borrower has in their outstanding principal balance may not count towards their aggregates? Any ideas? So in student loans, we have capitalized interest that can occur on a loan. So that means that all this accrued interest that's happened on this loan can be capitalized into the principal of the loan. And we don't want to count that capitalized interest that's now included in the principal against their borrowing limits. So the idea around this aggregate balance versus this outstanding principal balance is how much is the borrower eligible for, not how much has the borrower borrowed or how much do they owe. So we'll talk a bit about that. So the aggregate loan limits, I'm sure this is familiar to many of you. For sub loans, it's $2,300 for the undergraduates. Total sub and unsub are the combined limit for undergraduates is $31,000. I said $2,300 and I meant $23,000. $31,000, or if it's a graduate student, $138,500. So we're measuring all of the borrower's loans and how much towards these caps the borrower has borrowed or has accumulating. So we also, of course, are for if a student's been the parent's been denied a PLUS loan or they're an independent student, we do increase the cap for those undergraduate borrowers as well, which we just mentioned that because it can get a little tricky, and we'll show you in a minute why it's a little bit tricky in determining when we're displaying an aggregate or a warning icon to know if the student's dependent or independent. So the aggregate table on NSLDS, and I have to admit I can barely see this from my standpoint, so I know it's a little tiny, is divided into the undergraduate section, a graduate section, the totals section, and then we have others. So our others categories include things like Perkins loans or Parent Plus loans or Graduate Plus loans, rather. And then the sections above that display the amount borrowed that's attributable to those various buckets. This is not the amount borrowed. It's not how much the student owes. It's the amount that's attributable to their aggregate limits. So when I was an FAA, much longer than I'd like to really admit, that was about 15 years ago, I used to use this aggregate screen and would tell my students that that's how much they owed. And that is not how much the student owes. That's just how much is being applied towards their eligibility. So we talked a minute ago about the warning flag. So the system will flag when a borrower has either exceeded their limit or has come close to the limit. I know it's a little difficult to see, but if you look at the two middle icons, if you were to actually click on those icons, it would display all of the loans that are attributable to that warning. So that's a little trick that I don't think a lot of people know about, is you can actually click on the hyperlinked icons and see the loans that are rolling up into that actual warning. And then, of course, we do break out the undergraduate, graduate, as well as the combined limits. So not going to go too deep into that. So in addition to the actual loans, I mentioned a second ago that we do have a little bit of it can be difficult to identify if a student's dependent or independent for us to know which aggregate cap to apply to that student. So we do utilize information that NSLDS receives from CPS in order to flip the bucket for a dependent versus an independent student. Of course, that can be a little tricky if you have a mid-year student that's gone from undergraduate to graduate. If the ICER transaction that switched now that student to graduate, so now they're independent, hasn't come through yet, NSLDS is still going to apply the undergraduate loan limits. The undergraduate dependent loan limits. So we do utilize information from CPS, but we just want you to be aware that we are, if there's a question that the borrower is moving between dependent and independent, sometimes the flags might be based on a different dependency status than the student actually is, until we receive that updated transaction from CPS. So don't want to go too deep in there, but it does definitely have impact into which icons and which limits we're displaying. We also just want to point out briefly that this is the same data that's distributed on the ICER. I don't know how many of you guys actually review printed ICERs. We used to do that back in my day, but definitely now ICERs are mostly imported into school systems. So this information can sometimes be buried within a school system, but we do distribute that same aggregate data on the ICER. Of course, that's only as good as when the ICER transaction occurred. All right, so Lisa's going to walk us through a quick demonstration on some of the aggregate data.
All right, so what I've done here is this is a training site, so this is scrubbed data, no real data. So I am logging in. We created these test logins, or training logins. That's what I'm doing now. But it mimics what you guys do in real life, so I'm gonna also do all this good stuff. Oops. That's always fun when that happens. All right, let's try this again. Here we go. So if you have multiple schools, if you are responsible for multiple schools, you'll see them listed here, but we only have one school, so I'm going to click on that campus. All right, so once you log in, are you guys hearing me okay? I'm going to try to remember to lean in here. So when you log in, it first takes you to that menu screen. Most of you have probably seen this before, but I'm not sure if you know all the information that you can get on the menu screen, which is also really nice. We always provide here in this banner the system requirements. So if you want to see what you need on your personal systems at your schools to make sure that this works the best, this is where you find that information. And so I'll click on that for you just so you can take a look. And it tells you, Microsoft Internet Explorer. All right. Additionally, you can get our contact information here. So if you need to email us or you need to call us, you can get our information here, either from the ribbon or also on this handy dandy telephone icon. That will provide our contact information for you. We have frequently asked questions, which can be very helpful since you guys are new FAAs. There's a lot of different categories and areas. So you have technical stuff. There's some what kind of information you can get on NSLDS. If you need help with printing, lots of helpful tools. So frequently asked questions. And, sorry about that. And we also have here a download help. So if you click on this, that allows you to download all our help in a nice PDF packet, which can also be useful for newbies. All right, so we have this icon here. This is our question mark. This is our help icon. So if anywhere you need help, you can, in any of our pages, you can click on that question mark. And then we have this X. Do you guys know what the X is for? Yeah, well, when I first started, I thought it was to sign out of the system, but it doesn't sign you out of anything. This actually takes you back to that initial screen where it lists, where I showed you which school that you are working or you want to utilize and report for, that school. So that's what that one is for. All right. We also have messages here, so sometimes you guys will see messages. If we have some important information we want to share with you guys, we'll put it there for you. All right, now moving on to the Aid tab. And we will start going over some of this aggregate information that Eric was talking about.
Lisa, it's pretty cool that you're using the recently retrieved borrower.
Have any of you used this functionality? We're really excited. This is like within the last 2 years, we've added this functionality. It lets you go back to any of your 20 previously successful lookups. So I cheated before this and made sure I had all my people ready. All right. So we are going to look up this student. His name is Joseph Jam, fun name. And we are going to look at his aggregate loan information. So earlier, Eric talked about the different sections. Can you guys see this okay? So this first section here is our undergraduate information, the graduate information, our totals, and then the other, just like he mentioned earlier. Here we have the D. So what's our dependency status here?
Dependent.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one. I know. Right. So D for dependent. If it was an independent student, what do you think you'll see here? Right. Good. I. All right. So we also have, you'll note here, so we have that warning icon. And this one is specific for the graduate combination limit. So earlier, Eric mentioned that we have these clickable ones. So if we click on it, what happens here is it will filter. So I'm going to scroll down here so you can see. Just to highlight, here's the MPN information. So where it goes down to the loan summary, and it's going to filter. You'll notice here, if you can see it, I know it's probably really hard to read. It says currently sorted by loan date and filtered by graduate combination. So these are all the loans that are making up that graduate combination so that you can determine which ones are the ones that are causing the student to exceed. Any questions about that part? Okay. So I will now, if you have no other questions about the aggregates, we are going to go into the loan information. Let me get us back to our spreadsheet. Perfect. Sorry, so we're not downloaded, so we have to kind of skip through. All right. Oops, back. Okay, back me up too. Okay.
Perfect. All right, so underneath that graduate box, we list every loan that that student or borrower has borrowed, as well as if you're retrieving a student, you'll see the plus loans that are taken out on this, or the parent plus loans that are taken out on the student's behalf. If you search for the parent, you're only going to see the parent's plus loans that they've borrowed on that student's behalf. So just a quick warning, when you are reviewing this page and you do see a Parent Plus loan, you might want to take note of, is that loan taken out on behalf of the person you're looking at, or was the loan, are you reviewing the person who also has their own loans as well as a plus loan that they borrowed for one of their children? We wanted to highlight a couple things from the loan summary screen. First of all, if you look on the right side of the highlighted box, we have the loan status. So this loan status is an IA, and we're going to talk a bit more about what the loan statuses mean. But the other thing I wanted to point out is down on the bottom, we are displaying the holder of the loan, or in this case, the federal loan servicer that is responsible for this loan. So this loan's being serviced, we denote any federal loan servicer. First, we'll say Ed Servicer on the left, and then their name will say Department of Ed / something. It might be Department of Ed / Navient, could be Department of Ed / Federal Loan Servicing, obviously MOHELA, Nelnet, a number of different agencies. So when if you have a student that has a question about who is servicing their loan, or if you need to know who's servicing a student's loan, you can get a quick view of that servicer right here. If you click on the name, that will also take you to our org information that will display the contact information for the servicer as well. If this was a FFEL loan, we would display the lender or lender servicer, as well as the guarantee agency responsible for the loan. If it was a Perkins loan, we don't display anything for that Perkins. So as I mentioned, we do display the loan statuses. And again, these loan statuses are important as they're a driver for student eligibility. If a loan is in repayment, that's great. That means the student doesn't have any eligibility issues. However, the loan could be in default. If the loan's in default, students who are in default are not eligible for additional Title IV, so they have to resolve that default before they move forward. So you can see that high-level loan status right there on the aid, on the aid tab, loan history page. If you click on the status, not only will you see the list that includes the status being displayed, but also all of the statuses that are available on any loan. So I think we have about 27, 28 different statuses that a loan can be in. Some of them will make a loan eligible or make the borrower eligible for more aid. Sometimes some of them are not great and cause ineligibility that has to be resolved. But you can always click on the loan status and get more information about what that loan status means. So if you click on the loan detail, and while we're here on the loan detail, you can also see this is a borrower that has default. You'll also notice that now the loan status is in red instead of in blue. So we want to make it obvious that this is a problem loan for eligibility. But if you click on the loan detail box to the right of the loan status, by the way, you can also click on the blue number on the left side. That'll take you into the loan detail page. And the loan detail page has a plethora of data about every loan. We display all the applicable loan amounts, a number of activities. Activities include disbursements, discharges, forbearances, deferments. So all of that history is displayed if it's applicable on a loan. We also display the history of loan status changes. So if a borrower is changing, or a loan is changing status as it moves through time, and we would certainly expect a loan to start as in school and then move into grace and then into repayment, maybe default, and then hopefully eventually paid in full. You can see that in the loan status change. And then you can also see that if a loan has transferred from various data providers or servicers, you can see the history of all of the entities that service the loan as well. One important thing I want to point out here in the details for loan section is that we do display delinquency data. So does anyone know what it means to be delinquent on a loan? Yeah, I was in my 20s too at some point. So the date of delinquency is the date after the borrower's first missed payment. So if a borrower's payment is due on the 20th of the month, they missed that payment, we're going to reflect the 21st of the month here in this delinquency box. And that's going to indicate that the borrower, although maybe is still eligible for aid because they have not crossed a late stage delinquency, but this is identifying a borrower that has started to miss payments and might have missed multiple payments. As the months roll on, that delinquency date's gonna stay the same. However, it might be a month ago, then 2 months ago, then 3 months ago. Any idea of why a school might be interested if a borrower is delinquent? Cohort default rates come into play eventually. So a lot of schools utilize our delinquency data to keep an eye on the students that have separated. And we're going to look at, if we have time, at cohort default rate data as well as the delinquent borrowers listing. But a lot of schools do monitor that delinquency data to see borrowers that are moving towards a possible impact on their cohort default rate. You can also see in the activities for loan section, we have the outstanding principal and the outstanding interest balance. So I mentioned before that aggregate is how much is applied. However, this is the actual principal and interest that has accrued on the loans as of the date displayed. If you also notice there's a little history icon to the left, if you click on the history icon, you can see all of the outstanding principal and interest transactions that have been reported into the system. So just want to give you an idea here of the breadth of data displayed on that page. And Lisa's going to take us in a little deeper.
Okay. All right. Okay, sorry about that. We'll come into our person. Now, the first thing I want to identify here for you is these informational icons. So this is in the loan history. So where I'm at is I've hit the aid, the purple tab, aid, and you'll notice this is highlighted in the ribbon, the yellow. So I'm on the loan history page. And on this page, the same page that we saw the aggregated information, we're also going to see the name information, and we have this H icon that Eric mentioned earlier for history. So if we click on that icon, you'll be able to see name history for that borrower. Have you guys seen the icon before? Some of you that have used NSLDS? Okay. Then going back to our history, okay. Bless you. So again, this person has grants. And then this icon tells us that there's loans that are being tracked for the subsidized usage limit applies. That's SULA. All right, I'm going to go down here to the loan summary. Eric mentioned earlier about how we can sort. So we have these different sort options. We have loan type. You can look at default, non-default, loan status, outstanding principal, begin date, guarantee agency. We also have some display-only functions. So again, you can filter by how you'd like to display your information. So as earlier we mentioned, if you only wanted to look at aggregate limits, you could do that. We're going to look at this first loan here. This is loan number we have it identified as 1. And again, Eric showed the servicer who talked about how we identify which servicer is servicing that loan. So this one's an ed servicer. We have the loan status here. If you didn't know the loan status, you can hover over, and that will tell you what the loan status is in words. And then if you need to know more information, we mentioned earlier you could click on an icon. Do you guys remember which icon? This is a quiet group. The question mark, right? A question mark. So if we click on that question mark at the top of the page, you could also get all the information. You can also click on it, and that will also take you to help text so you can see all the different loan statuses and get more information. Okay, back to the loan, we're going to click on this loan detail button. And on our loan detail button, again, we go through the details for the loan, the different amounts. Mentioned earlier also, Eric talked about the history icon. What does the history icon do? What do you think it does here? Because this is on the loan, it's going to tell us the history of the outstanding principal and outstanding interest balance. So we're going to click on that, and you can see the history there. All right, back to the loan detail page. Hit that back arrow. We can see any activities that have happened for the loan, disbursements. And then at the bottom, we can see the status changes. And at the bottom of the page, you can also see who is servicing that loan. Are there any questions about the loan detail? Everybody uses this? Nobody uses it? You guys are looking at it, right? Okay, great. So let me take this back out. I'm going to show you a loan that's in default so that you can see what that looks like. All right, so this is that icon. Remember how we tell you we give you that warning icon that something's happening. So because this borrower has loans in default, we're going to shoot that warning icon at the top of the page to say, hey, look, this student, we have loans in default. Then if you scroll down, we could filter and only look at the defaulted loans. So we're going to look at that. DU status. And earlier, Eric also mentioned that it's red. So we're letting you know here it's red. Something not good is happening here. And if we click on the loan detail, we'll provide you more information when that status changed to become in that defaulted status. And then again, who's now servicing the loan. What's interesting here is that this loan has been serviced by multiple servicers, so you can kind of see the history of where that loan has been. Do you guys have any questions about the loan detail before we get out of the screen? Yes, sir.
Can you search within a school by the warning status? Let's say if I want to see all the students in my school that are in default or something like that, is there an option?
There is not, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've talked about that in the past from that perspective in terms of retrieval, but I like that idea.
Can you repeat the question?
So the
Eric?
question was, can a school search for every borrower that has a specific warning icon? And today that's not possible. There's also potentially some privacy concerns that we'd need to think through there. The idea behind requiring schools to enter in all three identifiers for the borrower, the SSN, first name, date of birth, tells us that you have interest in that specific student, or else you wouldn't have their identifiers. So we need to take that back and kind of play around with it and see if that's something we can look doing in the future. Thanks for the suggestion, though. It was a question, but it's turned into a suggestion.
Any other questions before we move on to we're going to now talk about grants. Okay, let me get us back to there.
So Lisa and I are keeping this at a pretty quick clip. I was just saying before the session started, I could talk 45 minutes about the page with all the bubbles and the data providers. So we really are just brushing the surface on what NSLDS houses for you guys and the functionality within it. So feel free, if you have any questions about any of the stuff we're not covering, to talk about that at the Q&A as well. So NSLDS does display a number of grant programs that could be awarded. All of the grant data, with the exception of Teach Grant, are fed into NSLDS from COD. So you could see Pell Grants. We actually still have ACG as well as Smart Grants. However, they haven't been funded for a couple years. So we're not making new grants in those programs, but we do have any student that's received one of those grants. You can view that on our website as well. And that's in addition to Teach Grants, which we receive from the Teach Grant servicer. as well as Iraq and Afghanistan service grants. So all of that information is available on our website on the grant history page. I just want to point out one quick thing, that if you were to look at a teach grant and that particular student has failed to meet their obligation on the teach grant, so the grant has converted now into a loan, what we do is we display a little L to the left of the teach grant itself. And if you click on that L, it's going to bring you back to the loan detail for what Lisa just walked us through for that grant that has now become a loan. So if you have any specific questions about a teach grant that is now converted to an unsubsidized loan, you can utilize that link there on the teach grant history to now view the individual loan that grant has converted to. And just as a note, teach loans, so after it's converted into a loan, do not apply towards a borrower's aggregate borrowing. So even though that now is an unsubsidized loan, that D8 or that teach loan is not going to count in their aggregates. Also on the aid tab, we have the aid overpayment list. So are you guys familiar with what an aid overpayment is? Yeah, I'm seeing some, good, lots of heads shaking. So we do collect aid overpayment data from individual schools, as well as if a school has failed to collect on the aid overpayment from the borrower, notice I said borrower, and has assigned that loan, has assigned that debt to the default management collection system, we would also show that overpayment coming in from DMCS. You can see, just like the loan statuses, if an overpayment is outstanding, it's going to display in a red status for overpayment, indicating that impacts the student's eligibility. They are not eligible for additional aid until they resolve that overpayment or make arrangements on the overpayment. But you can see in the overpayment above the first overpayment, we also that one's been repaid, so we're not displaying that in the red status. Last thing we want to talk about on the aid tab is the student contact information. So NSLDS collects student contact data, and that includes address, email, and phone from a number of sources. We collect it from CPS, the data that's provided on the FAFSA. We collect it from the Federal Loan Servicer. We collect it from schools through the enrollment reporting process. So all of that information is available here for you to utilize if you need it. A lot of times our servicers or our lenders will utilize the data for skip tracing if a student is not paying on their loans and they want to get a hold of that student. But the same information is available to you as FAAs if you're trying to find a student. Students are notorious for not keeping their contact data updated with our servicers, so take that with a grain of salt. But everything that has been reported into the system is also available to you. All right, Lisa's going to walk us through some grant and overpayment screens.
All right, so earlier we mentioned that this gentleman has a grant. So we have this icon here. So if we click on the banner here, the purple banner, and we click grants, you'll notice now our grants page will now be yellow, or on the banner it's highlighted yellow, and it takes us to the grants page. And we're going to scroll down, and we can get here, we can see that the student has Pell Grant history, and we can see the LEU and the different Pell Grants that the student has. The student also has Teach Grant history, and we see that down here. Now you'll notice that there's no icon here next to the Teach Grant, next to these awards. That means that these Teach Grants are still in good standing. I will show you now a Teach Grant not in good standing. You'll notice now we have the icon. This is a Teach Grant that's been converted to a loan. Again, we can click it's nice because we have the flyover that tells us when it was converted to a loan. And then we can click on the time clock, and it takes us to that loan detail page. And now I will show you, we've had the Children of Fallen Heroes. We are now getting that information. So we are now also displaying that on NSLDS, and I will show you what that looks like now.
Lisa, we just added the Children of Fallen Heroes this year, right?
That's correct. All right. So you'll notice here, I'm going to look at this first row here. We have a post 9/11 here, and then right underneath we have Children of Fallen Heroes. Yes. So that tells you that this Pell Grant was awarded with it, taking into consideration the Children of Fallen Heroes. Okay. Are there any questions about that before we move on? Okay. So now that I'll show you one more, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, sorry. Also kind of new, so. And because it's not a Pell Grant, it is its own type of grant, we give it its own section. Okay. All right. Any questions before I move on away from the grants? Okay. Now I'm going to show you an overpayment. Again, we click on the banner. I'm clicking the overpayment list. It highlights it yellow. That lets me know I'm on the overpayment list page. And let me find my student with an overpayment. That helps. All right. We get that warning icon again. Here's this saying that the student has an overpayment. And here's that overpayment. And it tells you that it's on a Pell Grant. Any questions about the overpayment display? Okay, so now I'm going to show you the student contact information. Again, clicking on the purple banner. All right, I'm now in the student contact information, and I'm going to scroll down, and you'll notice that we have a lot of different addresses for this student. And we also, as Eric mentioned, have that source. So in this column, we provide the source of the information. So here we have CPS. This is from Direct Loan Origination, COD. And then we have, this is a servicer, 580. And then we just list all the information that we have for our student here. Then we also do email addresses, phone numbers. Have you guys looked at this page? Anybody have to use it? No? Well, now you know where it is, so now we can use it, right? All right, any questions before we move into the next area?
I have a question.
Please.
If there's conflicting information in terms of an address on there, what's the standard you go by? What CPS says?
Sure.
Or what the collector say? Or?
So the question is if there's, and I'll paraphrase if you don't mind, if there's multiple addresses, phone numbers, or emails from different entities, how do we know which is the right one to use? Is that a fair way of putting it? Interesting question. NSLDS does not attempt to make that designation for you. So our idea here is we're displaying every entity that's given us data along with the effective date on which we received that data for you to make the determination. If a student has an address from CPS, okay, great. Student filed a FAFSA 4 years ago, and that address is from 4 years ago. You might be more interested in the address that's effective from the federal loan servicer, which is attempting to contact it, or hopefully is contacting the student, as opposed to that older address data from CPS. So our thought here, and you'll see in multiple places, the addresses will be duplicated because we are not attempting to say, hey, this is the right one for you to use. We are looking within the department on trying to figure out how to know what the golden view is, if you will, of a student. It's an ongoing effort that we have across all of our systems, which I know you guys have scratched a handful of the systems today. So I imagine, hopefully in the next coming years, and I do say years, not months, we'll have maybe an enhanced view of kind of a golden address or a golden phone number for a student. But we're still working on sorting that out. Excellent question.
Yes.
So I'm just looking at yours and seeing that there's the same address over and over with different dates. What does the source, just looking at it, you can see that there's the same address over and over. And I just happened to pull up one of a student that I have to work on an enrollment report. It has the same situation where the address is the same over and over and over, but the source code is different. So, but some of them duplicate along the way.
Yeah.
So what's the reasoning for that?
So again, NSLDS is not attempting to say which address is golden, if you will, for a student. So we're showing you everything that everybody has told us. If CPS gives us the same address as a federal loan servicer, we're going to show you both of those. If the school gives us the same address, we're going to show that to you as well. So we don't make any attempts when the data comes into the system to say, oh, we already got this address from another source, we don't need it from this source. The idea here is we serve up everything, and then you have your pick of the litter as to what is appropriate for whatever it is you're trying to do. Does that help? No.
I get the confusing part is that, like for instance, in the example I have with my student, it's the same source code, same address, and it's listed twice right next to each other. So
Cool. A lot of times, something like just changing a space in the data that's actually reported
That could be.
would duplicate the address, or if they spell out street versus ST in different reportings, that would trigger a new address.
that's it. That's the street versus ST. That's where I see it.
Yeah, so we don't attempt to, we've talked about in future iterations how we could maybe look at condensing some of those, but we're not there yet. That's kind of along with that golden view that I was talking about from the last question. I love that you pulled up one of your students right there on the fly though. That's awesome.
All right, any more questions before we move on? All right, let me get us back to where we're our presentation. Sorry about this.
Okay, as Lisa flips us over, we're going to talk a bit about enrollment reporting. I know that many of you indicated you use a third-party servicer, and a few of you said you were responsible for it yourselves. But we do want to take a minute to talk about enrollment reporting in terms of it being a requirement for participation in the Title IV program. I know if you utilize a third-party servicer, that's cool. You're definitely assuming that your third-party servicer is doing their job, and more than likely they are. But part of the enrollment reporting tools that we give you is the ability to have oversight over your third-party servicer to ensure that they are properly reporting to the department on your behalf. So the idea behind enrollment reporting, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, is that it's a roster and respond process. So we take all that loan information and grant information and other data that comes into the system, and we say, oh, Joe is going to school A. So we need to ask school A about is Joe really going there or not? So that's the roster. We will add Joe to the roster, send that out to the school, and expect the school to tell us what's going on with Joe. Is he enrolled full-time, half-time, not enrolled at all? The other thing that can happen there is we might not know about somebody that's attending your school, and you know that they're a Title IV recipient. NSLDS doesn't know. Maybe the loan data hasn't made its way into the system yet. You can also add students to the reporting in addition to telling us about the students that we're asking you about. So this is just kind of a high-level idea of the process. We send out a roster. The school responds to the roster, sends that into NSLDS. If there's any errors, we'll send that error file back to the school, and then we expect the school to fix their errors in 10 days and re-report and then start that process over again. So it's a full cycle of reporting. Most schools report every 30 days. The regulatory requirement is that schools report no less frequently than every 60 days. So we collect 2 levels of data in the enrollment reporting. We have the campus level data, and that basically is the students' overall attendance at your school. Are they full-time, half-time, less than half-time? Did they graduate from your school, et cetera? Then we have program level data. And the program level data tells us about the programs that the student has enrolled in. So that campus level is giving us the overall view of the student, and then our program level data is going to say, Eric was a math major. Eric stopped being a math major, and now he's an English major. So it's things like that we collect in the distinction between the two. So just kind of a highlight, the enrollment statuses that we collect are full-time, 3/4 time, half-time. Why are those 3 statuses important? If a student's in one of those enrollment statuses, their loans are in deferment, right? If a student's not in any of those statuses in NSLDS, it's possible that loan is going to convert to repayment, and then the student's going to bring in a paper deferment form to your registrar, probably sometimes to the financial aid office, and then have to go through the paper process. If we have the data right here on NSLDS, we send that enrollment data out to all of the servicers every week. Every Tuesday night, they get a file that lists all of the students that you've reported into us and their current status, so that they are properly servicing the loan. We also have our graduated and withdrawn statuses. Those are also important for the servicer to know when to put a loan into repayment. A lot of times, and timely reporting of graduation and withdrawals are really important. If you tell us in July that the student withdrew in June, great. The servicer can reach out to the student immediately and say, hey, your loans are going into repayment in 6 months. You have 6 months to get ready for that. But if you don't tell us about that until December, that they withdrew in June, guess what? The first time the student's going to hear from the servicer is your money is due. So timely reporting of all of the enrollment data is key in our servicing environment, and also key to SULA. And we're not going to talk much about SULA today, but it definitely comes into play in the 150% world.
Quick question on those codes there.
Yes.
What's your difference between X and Z?
X and Z, never attended or record not found. So a lot of times, basically we treat them the same on NSLDS. There's not a whole lot of difference to us. A lot of systems, if a student has applied to your school and then chose not to attend your school system is going to know about that person, as opposed to you just received a random person you've never heard about on your system from NSLDS on your roster. And so you don't even know who they are. So you can utilize, it doesn't matter to us which of the two you utilize, but if you're utilizing a system that does care about the two, that's kind of the difference between the two. All right, Lisa's gonna walk us through a bit.
All right. So our Enroll tab is this green one, so I'm going to click on the green one here. And the first thing that opens up when you click on that Enroll tab is Enrollment Summary for your student. So we're going to look at a student. All right. And Eric mentioned earlier that we have not only campus level enrollment detail information, but program level enrollment detail information. So first, if you click on this enrollment detail, this is going to give you your campus level enrollment information. I'm going to scroll down, and this tells us by school the enrollment that was reported at the campus level. If I go back out and I want to look at program enrollment detail, I'm going to click on program enrollment detail. And then we can look at the enrollment detail again by school. And this school, we'll look at this first one, College of FSA State. And this school has reported 4 programs for this student. Now, if you want, there's lots of filter options here. So we allow you to search. It's very helpful to search by active, but you can also look at inactive records. And active records, you can search by the location. Perhaps you're only looking at it, you want to look at your school. So you could click that location. You can apply those filters, and we will sort the information for you. Additional information that's helpful on this page is when things have gotten certified. If you need more information, you can click on the icon. And this will give you all your certification details, so you'll be able to see every time you certified that program for that student. Going back out. Additional information that we sometimes, you might be interested in using is if you are doing SULA and you want to look at subsidized usage, you can click on that. And just pick a different student. This student has loans that have been marked as being eligible for tracking with the SULA. Subsidized usage limit applies, and therefore we have the SULA subsidized usage, and so we provide that information on this usage summary page. All right, any questions about the enrollment summary? We do have additional information, enrollment timeline. The maximum eligibility timeline is specific to subsidized usage. And we also have our enrollment maintenance button, which we will talk a little bit more about. And we have the enrollment push to roster button also on the enrollment summary. If there's no questions about the enrollment summary, I'm going to now move us to enrollment update. If you want to, there we go. If you want to look at your roster or all the students that are on your roster, you can, or maybe you want to look at a subset of those students or students for a specific program. We have this enrollment update page in which you can it's actually a filter type page, and you can filter out for the information that you want to look up. I'm going to go ahead and just click retrieve so I bring up everybody. And then that takes you to your enrollment maintenance, in which you can select students that you want to certify their enrollment for. And again, if you want to, look by a certain, you can sort however you want to do that so that you can look for those specific students that you want to update, especially if they're tied to a specific program. Maybe you're doing all the students in a specific program. I want to see if I have icons here. Oh, yeah. We have these icons. Always we have these information icons. This will tell you here that this is enrollment reported by COD, but not certified by schools. Have you guys seen that before? So we will list both those programs that we get from COD that you have not, and also programs that you have certified at the school. And if there's any late, I don't have an example here, but if there is a late, you haven't responded to your roster, you'll get a warning icon at the top of this page saying, hey, you need to do the enrollment, and it'll be next to the program, that you need to update the enrollment for that student. So I'm going to show you an update. We're going to just pick this one. And for this one, I'm going to make sure that my status here at both the campus level and at the program level is going to be halftime. And I'm going to change that effective date at the program level, or I'll leave it actually. And then we will just go ahead and I'm going to certify, oops, sorry, I forgot to check the box. My apologies. Check that box, and then I will certify that student. And now I will confirm, and now that student will be certified. And that's how we do an update if you're doing enrollment maintenance. Does anybody do this? I think we only saw about 5 people that actually do the enrollment reporting. Okay. What's also really cool for those that do enrollment reporting is that we added new functionality this year for the enrollment history update that allows you to update enrollment for a student, their whole enrollment history. So in this example here, let's find my student. And you guys couldn't do this before, so we're really excited. So what's really nice is if you have, and again, we want you to do campus and program level. Say we made a mistake. We have this history for this student, but the student actually was always full-time. So what's really cool is I can just simply click here and I can delete that half-time enrollment. And I'm gonna submit. And this lets us know the enrollment history update has confirmed. And now you'll no longer see that half-time enrollment. So it's a nice way to, if you have to reconstruct one of your students' history, you can also add programs. You can add the history as well. So very new, but very helpful, we hope. Okay, any questions about enrollment maintenance, enrollment history update before I move on?
Why is there two separate pages for
Good
maintenance versus history update?
So history update is for your specific student, where maintenance is for your school.
Right, so when they're under maintenance, your requirement for certification is you're always telling us about the student's current enrollment status on maintenance. So the idea here is just like responding to a roster with the student's current status, you're gonna utilize maintenance to tell us, yep, he's still half-time, nope, he graduated. History allows us to go back in time on individual students and update their historical statuses. We're really in the deep end of the pool here, why? But NSLDS uses historical data for things like the college scorecard to determine who should be included in the college scorecard, things like that. So if you have time, I'd encourage you to attend the college scorecard session. And we actually talk in that session about utilizing the history process to manage who is included in your scorecard calculations.
All right.
Sorry.
No, great. If there's any other questions, feel free. I mean, we want the questions. Last, I'd like to show you the enrollment reporting profile. I'm going to click on that page and your statistics. And on this page, what's nice, it tells us it tells you also your enrollment reporting profile, how often you want to report. This individual has multiple campuses that they have enrollment administration for. It provides your TG mailbox for getting your roster and the schedule that you get your roster. So we have the future schedule. Again, remember training database, so the schedule date here is not accurate. And then past schedule. And you can update your schedule if, say, in our example here, we have 10/1/2019. But if you don't want to get your roster on the first of the month, perhaps you want to get it, on the 15th or on the 27th. Whatever day works best for you, you can update your schedule for that date that you'd like to get your roster. Okay. Next, I'd like to show you your enrollment reporting statistics. And under your enrollment reporting statistics, we have those icons, information icons here, the compliance notification and your late roster notification. Again, these are info only, which means that you have not received these things. So it's actually good when you have these info icons. If you do receive a letter, you will get a warning icon at the top of your page. But this school is doing a great job. We see that they're % certified and their with program enrollment is 99% here, so we like that. If you, so you can see your statistics here. Has anyone seen this page or been responsible for this page? Okay. If you are the person who does enrollment for us, we always ask that you update your information here so that we know who the org contact is for enrollment. So if you'll add your information here under Add New Contact, then we have a role that's specific to enrollment reporting, and that's who we can notify if there are any reporting issues. We could contact you. We can also send those letters to you so that we have someone that we can talk to. And then you can talk to us as well, and we can help you. If for some reason you can't meet that threshold, then you can contact us as well, and we can work together to find out the reason and determine if you need a new threshold for your school. Okay, that is everything that we had planned to show you about enrollment for the demonstration. Are there any questions before we move on out of enrollment? Yes, sir.
For the zip codes, is COD the record for zip codes and any updates there? Do they go into NSLDS or are they in your application?
So the question is, if when a zip code comes in, which system, COD or NSLDS, is the truth about the program that the student is enrolled in? Is that a fair categorization of your question? The answer is both systems are responsible for that. COD is going to identify the zip code at the time of disbursement. However, we know that students don't just change majors when loans are dispersed, right? The major could change anytime the student decides they want to change a major. So that's where NSLDS comes into play. So basically, we seed the enrollment roster with the zip code that comes in from COD because you've told COD the student's in this program. So we're going to add that program to your roster for that student. And then you are required to either come in and say, yep, student's still in this program, or nope, student left that program and now they're a math major. So both systems essentially are the system of record for the zip code, if you will. NSLDS is a system of record for a student's current enrollment.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let us get back to I think we have 5 minutes. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any additional questions you have. I believe they'll be providing the PowerPoint slides. Yes, so after the presentation, I believe you guys will be able to get access to those PowerPoint slides that we have. So any slides that we did not get to today, you can get them and look at them. You can also visit our resource center this week if you have any specific NSLDS questions. We have a table there. We also have a hands-on session on Wednesday and twice on Thursday. So if you want to actually come in and play and get your hands into NSLDS and kind of move around the training site like I did today, you can do that. And we have the update session. I don't know which days, but we also have the NSLDS update session, which will provide lots of nice new information. And so we want to open it up to questions. And if you don't have questions, we have some for you as well. No questions? Sorry, as I move through the slides. I feel like a broken record. Okay. All right. So we'll just do the recap then, since you have no questions. When a student exceeds the undergraduate subsidized loan limits, what type of icon will you expect to see at the top of the page?
Candy corn.
Right, the candy corn, our warning icon. What's 5 informational items that you can get from NSLDS? Nothing? You guys got nothing? Got nothing. Sorry? Right, loan information, awesome. Address information, your contact information for your student. Sorry? Oh, right, enrollment history, great, awesome. Yes, grant information. Oh, yeah, overpayments, exactly, awesome. When updating enrollment status using enrollment maintenance, should you update at the campus level or program level? Both? Oh, you guys are sharp, I like it. All right, and what are 3 ways, we didn't get to this, how many of you run reports in NSLDS? Anybody? Okay, great. Well, for those of you who do run reports in NSLDS or don't, we have 3 options to get your reports. You can get them scheduled, and they go to your designated TG mailbox. You can request them ad hoc, which also go to your designated TG mailbox. Or you can get them, we call them on demand, but they're listed under web reports, and you can go ahead and get them directly from the web at the time that you request it. And all those layouts are available to you for all of our reports, as well as descriptions for each report on IFAP. And we provided lots of tools and references in our PowerPoint, so we link you to all kinds of information. And then we also provide you our contact information. Again, please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. But before we leave, I think there's like 2 minutes. Any questions? Any questions? No takers? You guys are just tired? Okay. I think Holly has an announcement for you. Oh, Holly's ready. Okay, thanks so much.